Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here today because I have a conversation coming that I've been looking forward to for a while. A little while back, I was listening to another podcast and I heard today's guest, Lamarr, talking about psychological safety. And honestly, I could not stop thinking about it. The way he talked about it was not the buzzword version that we hear thrown around in every leadership training. It was personal, it was real, and it made me want to sit down with him and dig deeper because I think this is one of those topics that sounds simple on the surface, but it actually changes everything about how a team functions and how you get it right.
Mm.
So today I'm talking to Lamarr Lewis. He's a therapist and author, a speaker, and the founder of Lewis Family Consulting, where he works with nonprofits, public health organizations, and mental health agencies to help their leaders build cultures of wellness, resilience, and trust. He has over 20 years in the field, and he has been a subject matter expert for the CDC and has a holistic approach to leadership that I think you're going to connect with immediately. We are going to talk about why psychological safety matters so much for teams, what it actually looks like day to day, and how leaders can start building it even if they're not starting from scratch. Lamar, thank you so much for being here.
For sure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, awesome. Well, let's get started. Let's start simple. When you say psychological safety,
Mhm.
what does that actually mean to you?
That's a great question. I wasn't thinking you're gonna go with the heavy hitting stuff off the rip. Uh, and thank you for that dubious introduction. I don't know who that guy was you're talking about because that surely isn't
Oh,
me.
come on.
Um, but to answer your question as succinctly as I can, and I tell people all the time, give me some grace. Uh, I'm a late ADHDer, so I verbally process, so I might beat around the bush, but I promise you I'm getting to the point.
Okay.
What does psychological safety mean to me? Man, I wasn't ready for that question. For me, I would say psychological safety is what I'm doing now. Um, that openness, that vulnerability, that creating environments and spaces where people can mess up, not be perfect, ask questions, have hard conversations, and then not fear what those things will bring down the road in the workplace or in a team setting, right?
Yeah.
There's obviously a difference between kind of emotional safety and psychological safety, and those two things often get conflated.
Mm,
Um, but they're just very distinct differences. And I think because of my unique skill set and experience as a therapist, making that distinction is helpful. Like, when I say psychological safety, because I'm a therapist, people like, oh, so you know what this is from like a clinical or practitioner kind of perspective. But it's like, no, I've worked in some pretty crappy places and with some pretty crappy environments, and that's how I know what psychological safety is, right? Like, I know empathy because I need empathy. I've been through experiences where I needed to, to have it and give it. You know what I mean? I know compassion because I've needed compassion and experienced times when I needed it. So when I get it, I feel it, right? And I think that for me, to your point earlier, and I thank you for saying that, like, if we can't ground this stuff in real world experiences, then what's the
hmm
point? Like a lot of times, and I believe Maya Angelou said this, and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but people may not always remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. And to me, that's
Yep.
kind of what it is, right? Like I feel like this is the place where I can just, when I say show up and be me, I think sometimes people think psychological safety is let people do what they want to do or say what they want to say. And that's not what I'm advocating for. What I'm saying when I define psychological safety is, can I show up as myself, as whole as I can in the workplace, um, and just feel safe enough to be me in whatever space that is without the retribution afterwards. I'm a person who speaks up. I'm a
hmm
talker. I'm going to say something. Um, I'm very sensitive to injustice. I'm very, like I tell people all the time, like, I've never liked bullies. and all of my
Mm,
kerfuffles in life um, have been against bullies. People picking on somebody else has always rubbed me the wrong way. And so
yeah.
in these workplaces where people feel bullied, feel minimized, ostracized, not heard, not validated, how can I come in and create those environments or assist in creating those environments? That's kind of what it is. Can I
Right.
show me? So long answer to a short question. You get a lot of
No,
those today.
thank you. I know, because I'm not, it's not my first rodeo with Lamarr. I've heard you in
No.
a couple of other podcasts. So,
Well, I'm on the
uh,
one, you got to be where I'm on the one that counts today. This is where we are today. So yes.
exactly, exactly. So, thank you for saying that when you need psychological safety is when you realize what psychological safety actually
For
is,
sure.
right?
For sure.
When you don't have it, you know what's missing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people who might be watching this video, and myself included, can totally relate to what you said because
For sure.
I have stories also from workplaces where there wasn't psychological safety, and
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things where you know what you're missing when it's not there. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. I think
Um,
that's a great point. Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So you you have this line I love, which is like that as a leader, you are responsible for making sure your team feels valued and respected
Mm-hmm.
in order to achieve any kind of success.
Mm-hmm.
Can you unpack that for us? Like why does respect have to come before performance?
Yeah. These are good questions. And as a person who asks questions, I love good questions. So that's why I'm
Yeah.
taking a pause. Um, well, I'm gonna answer this two ways. I'm gonna answer this from what I understand from psychological safety and what I also understand, you know,
Mhm,
um, related to my perspective of it. So,
mhm,
Dr. Timothy Clark, who is another, expert in the field around psychological safety, basically stated that, trust and respect are these foundational components to psych. You can't do anything else. You can't get to the, inclusion safety, learner safety, challenger safety, and I always miss the other C. Um, but you can never get to any of these contributor. There you go.
mhm,
Contributor safety. You can't get to any of that if you don't have that baseline of trust and respect. And I think that the reason why that's so vitally important is because something I say a lot in my holistic leadership workshops that I do is you as a leader are leading a whole person, not just a staff or a direct report or subordinate. But you as a leader are also a whole person, not just a director, a CEO, or president, or whatever your title is, right? And I think that the second part to the question, for
mm,
me as a human, I operate on a baseline level of respect. That's at the core of any human I come in contact with, whether it's Fortune 500 CEO, whether it's the unhoused person on the street and many people in between and outside of that, right? Like
mhm,
everybody gets respect from me. I'm not going to raise my voice. I'm not going to call you out your name. I'm not going to do certain things. Conversely, I want that same level of respect. And I think that it's so important because we have to be clear about what respect is for folks. And the easiest way for me, right,
mhm,
is just, they call it the golden rule. Or if you watch the Odyssey recently, Zeus's rule, right? Like, you know, would you want this done to you the way you're doing this to me? Would you want me to belittle your value or to dismiss, your contribution or to ignore, whatever it is you offer to the team or to the organization? Would you want that
mhm,
from the person who's, above you or working with you or whatever? No, nobody does. So like for me, that's what that looks like. Like, hey, I want to be of value. I want my contributions to be valued. And not just monetarily. And I think that's something that also when we talk about respect. Some of us work in fields, a lot of the organizations that I partner with, you know, we don't get into them. Like I didn't get into therapy to be rich. I didn't get into, supporting these organizations to get rich per se. I got into it to help people. right? Help my
Mm-hmm.
community, help the people I serve, help the people who help the people. You know what I'm saying? That's how I
Yeah.
came into this with. So money ain't always going to be the end all be all. Now we need it. Obviously, we live in America and prices are going up and all that jazz. Not, saying it's not important, but for a lot of us who work in these kind of mission driven spaces,
Mm.
money ain't gonna be the only thing, because there's not, you get into it. I never got into therapy like, oh, I'm gonna get rich or being a therapist. Like,
No.
that's not, because it's just, I don't say it doesn't happen. I want to be clear, but if I wanted to get rich, I would have got into another field where that's like a potential outcome.
Right.
And then even the type of stuff I do, working with community-based organizations and working with public health organizations, the flow of money is just different. Not to say you can't make money. I'll make
Right.
sure I'm clear. I'm just simply saying that ain't why I got into it. And so
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's another form of respect. I respect why you got into what you got into. I respect your motivations. I respect your, I know enough about you. I took intention to figure out what actually drives you and keeps you showing up to this work every day.
Mm.
Then that's respect. Because I respect you enough to figure that out. You're not just a
Right.
widget, you know what I'm saying, on the conveyor belt. You're actually a part
Mm-hmm.
of this, and that respect is in valuing your opinion and valuing your perspective, even if it's different from mine, and being
Mm-hmm.
open to saying, you know what, dog, that's a good idea, versus whatever. Anyway, so moving on, like,
Or like,
you know what I
or
mean?
that's not gonna work because blah 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 blah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But something you said at the beginning of your answer that I wanted to kind of
For sure.
reemphasize is something so basic that I think a lot of leaders forget when
Mm-hmm.
they're in the weeds and when they're living their day to day is the golden rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, would you want this to be done to you? Like whatever you're doing right now, would you want it to be done to you? If the answer is no, probably shouldn't be doing it to somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm. You would think, but as my grandma was like to always say, common sense ain't common. You would think that, and I work with some places really intimately, where you're like, I know how you're talking to this person isn't cool.
Mhm. Mhm.
I know
Mhm.
this isn't how you want somebody to talk to somebody you care about. You know,
Yeah.
if my daughter's in school, I'm gonna just use because I always use real world examples.
Yeah.
If a teacher is talking to her in a way that I don't think is appropriate for a learning environment, I'm going to have a conversation with that teacher, not on
Yep.
anything aggressive or anything like that, but I just need the teacher to know that I don't know how other kids learn. I don't know your training. I don't know any of your background, but I know this little girl. And what I know about her is that your method, because she's very much like me, the yelling and the cussing and screaming, all that never moves me. If anything, it shuts me down. And
Right.
most people, I would say, in my experience, don't get motivated, especially in the workplace, like that. I don't
Mhm.
mean you can't motivate people and cheer people on, that kind of thing, but like the negative reinforcement doesn't always work, or it doesn't really give you the best quality of work. And that's a big part of psychological safety. Like when people feel psychologically safe, you see innovation grow, you see people morale increase, you see people wanting the workplace culture being healthier and all these different things. You see it, but again, you can feel it.
Yep.
I feel like I want to show up for Lamarr, because Lamarr, he's solid. I want to show up for Fernanda, man. She good. She got my back. She always going,
Yeah.
you know. Then you're
Yeah.
not caught off guard by these random situations that you didn't see coming because people aren't talking to you.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
all of that, to your point, plays a role, but we often forget a lot of times that we were in certain spaces before we move up, the ladder. And then you forget. And a lot of my work is centered around things I've learned the hard way, thinking I'm
Mm.
doing, and that's the other part too, like thinking I'm doing something right. And then
Mhm.
being made aware, like, there's some ways you could do this, that ain't really, the way, and this is what's going on. And but sometimes people really don't know until somebody feels safe
Yeah.
enough to say, hey, you're not. this ain't cool, man. Like you got to do something a little different. Um, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
that's the other
This
part of the
goes
work. Yeah.
feed. Yeah,
No, I'm good.
feedback can go both. That sorry about that. Yeah,
Hmm.
feedback to your point in a safe environment. Feedback can go both directions, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
not just the boss giving the employee feedback, but the employee giving the boss feedback.
Mm-hmm.
That's a telltale sign of a safe environment.
Absolutely.
Um, so speaking, like in terms of as a segue,
Mm-hmm.
what are some behaviors that you've seen or you've been made aware of leaders doing,
Mm,
even if they had good intentions,
for sure.
that actually break down psychological safety in a team?
That's a great question too. And as you were talking, I was going to bring it up anyway, so I'm glad you asked this question. There's
Mm-hmm.
a segment I do where I talk about like these 8 critical issues in leadership that I found.
Mm,
And I'm not going to give you all of them, but a couple of them to answer your question directly. One of them is what I call like the A type personality, right? And I
mm,
mean like really overly involved and things like that, which I equate oftentimes to the behavior of micromanagement. A lot of
mm-hmm.
times, in my experience, there's 2 I want to mention, but that's the first one, where people are really thinking they're being helpful and not realizing how it undermines a person's expertise, experience, skills, professionalism, right? Um,
Yeah.
and I think a hard part to that is folks also don't understand if you're not at that next level sometimes you don't know the pressures above. So I call it the middle management, and this goes for any leader, but I've seen it specifically in middle management because one of the things that I've learned really this is cross sector, but definitely in the sectors I'm in, behavioral health, mental health, stuff like that. Like, oh, Lamarr, you're good in the program, or you're good with the clients, you're good with the people. You want to get you want to be the manager? If money was my motivation, which it was at the time, absolutely. I get paid how much more? Yeah, it wasn't a whole lot more in hindsight, but it's more to what I was making. Absolutely. You know what I mean? So you do that, but you don't get any really formal kind of management training. So that's a big reason why I'm in this space I'm in now, is because a lot of folks don't get like leadership development training and how to really be
Right.
a leader in these spaces. You just kind of get promoted. Things that made you a great whatever service you were providing may not make you a
Mm-hmm.
great manager or a great leader. So you
Yeah.
were telling me
Yeah.
about this pressure cooker. If you think about a box,
Mm,
you know, you got the pressure from up top, wherever
mm-hmm.
your leadership is, that you have to report to. Well, then you have below you the people that you lead, pressure from them. And it's really even
Mm-hmm.
more intense if you worked with them. This is my experience. And then you got promoted above them. That's the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you got that level of pressure. But then you got the outside
Yeah.
pressure of like the stakeholders, the people you provide a service to. All that is usually pressure built down on the middle managers. And it felt a lot with people in the middle because you got all these different pressures that come in and people don't really name that, right?
Yep.
So in that pressure cooker, you're doing stuff that people may not receive with the intention. You're thinking, oh,
Mm,
anytime you send an email to such and such, make sure you CC me on it. You're thinking
mm,
it. I'm in the loop. I'm covering myself. I'm doing this, that, and the third. They're thinking about it like, well, why don't you trust me to do what you say to do what what I said I'm gonna do? Why are you all that thing?
yeah. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So that's a big one. Then another one I want to highlight out of the 8, similarly, is being numbers driven. If you got objectives you have to meet from a compliance standpoint or from a grant standpoint or whatever, then that becomes the focus for some people. Well,
Mm,
you got to make sure you get this in because of this. You got to make sure you get this in because of that. And people don't always understand why that's important,
yeah.
or they're made overly aware of why that's important. Then all it seems like is you're only driven by the numbers. So
Mm,
then you might be well intentioned to say, hey, if we don't generate enough billing, we can't pay people on time. Like if you
right.
say that enough, And people are like, well, I know I do my part. Why am I in jeopardy? What's going, like, what are they doing with the money? You start getting all these other questions that may or may not be necessarily accurate or relevant, but the brain likes to close loops. So if I don't know why, and it seems like all we're driven by is the numbers, then people's behavior tends to shift. And again, that impacts the safety of an organization.
Right.
But I ask people, hey, out of these 8, what have you experienced as a person who's been led by somebody? Then I always flip it to go with the empathy part. What have you done as a leader or middle manager that could be perceived similarly? Just so people know, like, yeah, we've all worked in some crappy places, maybe, or places that weren't really conducive to where we were trying to go in life. And we've probably done some stuff unknowingly. Like sometimes we judge people harshly for stuff and they didn't even know they was doing. So being able to identify that, be aware of that, really is a big deal. But again, those 2 things off the top of my head really impact safety, psychological safety in the workplace, because they're often well-intentioned.
Yeah. Can I add another example
By
from
all
my
means, for sure.
experience?
Absolutely.
And maybe this is something you've heard in trainings that you've done or teams you've worked with, but there was one time I was department where the leaders would use the instant messaging on Microsoft Teams while we were in meetings, and they would have their own private chat going, kind of critiquing whatever people were saying in the meeting, but not actually giving people instant feedback or anything. You would just, as a contributor to the meeting, you would find out later from your boss that such and such was unhappy with what you said in the meeting because they had a group chat going. So maybe in their minds, they thought, oh yeah, let's have this group chat because it's convenient and we can share our thoughts with each other while the meeting is happening. But they probably didn't realize the message that what does that say to the people on the receiving end? The people who were actually saying things in the meeting. Like we got a different message. The message was, you guys don't trust us and you don't like what we're saying and you don't even trust us enough to tell us that you don't like what we're saying.
I'm doing I'm at a conference next week, and one of the sessions I'm facilitating is around quiet meetings and why meetings go quiet. And I was thinking of different scenarios, and it's not the same scenario, so I might tweak this based upon what you just said, because I think that's it's an example of a meeting, but that's an even better like example of why people don't say anything in meetings. If I'm in a meeting and let's say I'm leading it, right? They brought me in. This happens. You bring me into a staff meeting to, help facilitate a difficult conversation or whatever. And people are on their laptop. Like, that's why I prefer to be face-to-face versus virtual sometimes, because you can catch that stuff in real time. If I'm on a webinar, like right now, I could be like looking at other stuff. I could be doing anything else and not really being present. But when you're face to face with folks and in the space with them, it kind of forces them to be more present. And so, to that point, not only are you not really present, you're engaging in side talk. Now, you're not verbally saying anything, but and I learned this going to 12-step programs and stuff like that, where there's a rule with no side talk. It's the first time I've ever heard that term before. And the reason why I apply that when I do workshops and stuff now, because that's one of the things that happens, especially in conferences and workshops. Like, people gonna click up and be with who they're cool with or people who they know. So people have these little side conversations. The thing with what you're talking about, which takes it up a level, is the thing with side talking is that it makes whatever the person is saying seem not as important as what you're saying. And when you think about like group counseling or support groups or like, like 12 steps, stuff like that, the whole point is to learn from each other. Like I share my experiences. We kind of debrief the experiences and process it together, so we can learn from each other. So if you were saying something, this is the lesson I learned. If you're saying something to somebody else on the side, obviously what you're saying is more important than what that person is saying. And we all need to learn from it. So we gonna let you say it to everybody. Like, I've been some people, they're like hardcore like that. Like, no, let's stop. Lamarr, Fernanda, what you got going on? Tell us. And with
That's
that,
awesome.
it puts that level of accountability, and also back to safety, right? So that example you just gave, which is like fantastic, because that's a perfect example of them thinking one thing and then the impact it has on the team. Now you wonder why. Well, no, why not? Nobody says anything in the meetings anymore. Well, if I say something that you all are going to have a whole side conversation about it, then why would I say something anymore? What I'm going to do, this is what generally happens, right? I'm going to have my own side conversation. Yo, did you know they were doing this? They were doing that? Did you know they were having this? They were doing, you know what? I think, man, now you're forming tribes, which leads to, in the work I hear a lot, the silos, people not talking, people not communicating, people kind of in their own worlds. And it creates this us versus them instead of us against the problem. And whatever that thing is being discussed. And to your other point, it also diminishes feedback, because I'm not going to say anything to somebody who's not really listening, or who's listening
Mm,
to critique, but not offer any
mm,
positive feedback, right? The thing
mm-hmm.
about feedback is, when you get an exchange, not every piece of feedback is going to be, pleasant, but it doesn't mean it can't be constructive. But if I'm
Right.
constantly giving negative feedback, then at a
Mm-hmm.
point you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to say nothing. And let me parallel to what you just said real quick. Speaking of meetings and having side conversations. So last place I worked at, and I'm gonna keep saying the last place because there's a reason why I'm saying that. I got promoted, and some places they do these leadership rounds where the upper management comes down to where folks who are doing the service, and they come and they talk to them. What was that TV show used to be? Oh man, Undercover Boss.
Oh yeah, yeah,
But they do that, right? Because if I act like I'm just a regular, then I can hear the real feedback. And
yeah.
so, but they're coming down and doing these leadership rounds, and they came to our staff meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So there were things that I may have gotten a memo on, or stuff I was told I needed to convey to staff, and I know I said, and we had conversations around and things of that nature. But then when the big bosses came down, my staff at the time just started like saying all kind of stuff. I'm just like, what is going on? I can admit I wasn't as mature then as I am now, but I definitely felt away by some of the stuff they were saying, because it felt personal. Like, wait a minute, hold on. So I started speaking up, back to speaking up, right? But I didn't think I said anything inappropriate or anything. I just spoke up for myself,
Yeah.
and for the program at large, right? The next day, I get called into the office from my supervisor, who was, I think she was there, and then other people who were above her were there. And I was told that I basically wasn't supposed to talk in that meeting. That was
Oh,
that was the staff's opportunity to connect with them, because technically I'm closer to upper management than they are.
yeah.
And my retort was, um, I don't know them either. They don't talk to me. Like, I don't see them. Like, it's not like we're in the same spaces. I don't talk to them unless usually there's a problem. So
Right.
why wouldn't I say something? But again, they're having these other conversations. They're creating narratives and stories around why and what and who should and these kind of things. And then you show up blindsided by a person's feedback when you were there in the space, and we could have had a conversation around that. So
Yeah.
your example, and I just want to parallel it with an example, not the same but similar, of you, if you felt that way about it, if we had a safe enough environment, You could have said, "Hey, Lamar, let me talk to you real quick. Hey, I
Right.
noticed that," and just talk about it. And I think one of the hardest realities I've had to accept is that in a lot of these spaces where you would think people would be more open or more skilled at listening, feedback, asking questions, coming to up to collaborative solutions, things like that, would be more um would be easier for some folks to do. It's very, yeah, very odd to me, but
Yeah. So I
yeah.
bet, Lamar, I bet
Hmm.
there's people listening who are gonna be like, "Oh, I recognize this.
For sure.
This is happening in my organization," whether it's a leader or a team member who is
Hmm.
recognizing this. I guess it's a two-part question.
Hmm.
What's a step they can take?
For sure.
And if you want them to remember anything from today,
Hmm.
what's that thing that you want them to remember?
First step. Wow, that's another great question. Um, the thing that comes to mind to me is what I deem as pockets of safety.
Mm,
You know, when you work in big organizations or you work in organizations where there's a lot of, you get silos and kind of just fractured interactions and a lot of disconnect between, leadership and the people doing the work every day and all that kind of stuff. Um, it's easy to be like disenchanted, apathetic, like, yeah, well, this ain't gonna work. What's
mhm,
the point? You know what I mean? Um, nothing ever changes. All those type of phrases, right? And so for me, I always close with or try to remind people that you don't need the whole organization to create psychological safety and, dare I say, safety in general. Um, but specifically with psychological safety, you just need enough of y'all. Maybe it's your program within. I felt like where I last worked at, even though I didn't know what psychological safety was, because I went through some of these experiences, I intentionally tried to create those environments for my team.
mhm,
And so within the greater dysfunction, if my program can run functionally, if I can create spaces of safety, people want to come and talk to me and share feedback and give me ideas, and we try to implement them, and I advocate for them, and I model when I make a mistake, apologizing and atoning and trying to do something different, all these different things, and more, right? But was you, was, I share that with folks because I want them to understand that it doesn't have to be this grand sweeping gesture. It really
mm,
can be, we're going to do, I'm going to support you, I'm going to be here for you. Hopefully it comes from leadership, hopefully it comes from management. But if it's just, and I want to make it clear, a pocket of safety is different than a click or your own, this is functional, healthy. Hey,
mm,
we got to keep each other safe, we got to keep each other grounded, we got to be there for each other, support each other. That's different than trying to create division or, trying to click up with people to, be adversarial. Because at the end of the day, the work is still the work, and we're trying to do big things no matter what setting you work in, whether you work, for profit, nonprofit, some profit, nonprofit, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like wherever you're
yep,
working. So developing these pockets of safety, these spaces where I can, show up, speak my mind, challenge, come up with ideas, um, and not fear that it's going to be, oh, well, me and Fernanda got a pocket of safety, but Fernanda went and told supervisor about what we talked about. So now I don't feel safe anymore. You see what I'm saying?
yep,
Um,
yep,
so I think that's that. And then if I could, one takeaway, which kind of parallels the same thing, I would say, or one thing I want people to think about. Um, hmm, I'll just kind of go back to something I said earlier, like honoring the human experience, you know,
yes,
something that one of my mentors told me that I didn't really get it. I was going through some stuff at the job, and I was really frustrated with a particular person on my team, and I wasn't really owning my role in that. At the time, I felt
mhm,
like this person, I didn't know that this person, back to the familiarity breeds contempt in the pressure cooker, like that bottom. We were coworkers. We were very close. And then I got approached to apply for our manager got fired for many reasons, but I got approached to take over the program. I applied and got the gig. So I'm trying to do whatever I need to do to keep this job and keep it going. So some of my behavior at the time, I'm sure, was off-putting. And I also operate at a really high level. Like I work hard, real high work capacity. And that in the past has really burned people around me out. I'm just working. But to expect that from other people is where I was in error, right? So I'm just using myself as an example. So I say that to say I'm frustrated with this staff member to the point where I'm like showing up to work way earlier to see what time they're coming into work so I can keep my little lecture. Like all these little things that are not in my, now I feel like I gotta like protect myself and I gotta, well, you did this, I'm gonna do that. You know, this is what was going on back then. This is before. One of the things I will say, one of my strong points I've learned is to seek counsel. Like maybe if I don't feel like myself, like let me ask somebody who has another perspective. Maybe I'm looking at this from a distorted lens. So I reached out to a person at the job I was at who was over a certain department. I just was really impressed with like how he spoke, how he carried himself, the stuff he would say. And I was like, I think I could learn from him. So I reached out to him, said, hey, can I, take you out to lunch and just pick your brain? And he's like, I'm venting, fussing about this situation. And he's like, Lamarr, he said two things that I want to leave with people. He's like, I don't even really worry about what time people show up to work. I worry about if they're doing their job. Are they doing their job? If they show up 10 minutes late and they're doing their job, does it really bother me? If they take a few extra minutes on lunch, does it really bother me? Like, does it really stop what I'm doing if they're doing their job? Right. I never thought about it that way. And it's not to say that you just let everything pass, but it's like, what's important? What's really the big picture? And back to the human element, which is why I started with this, you don't know what people are doing prior to them showing up. And maybe just harping upon that 10 minutes might cause a total disruption to other parts of their life if they're doing their job. That's always the caveat, right? So thinking about those things, making myself aware of that. The second thing he said that I want to leave with people is that nobody shows up to work and thinking they're going to do a bad job. Like people show up to work thinking they're doing good work, even if they're not. And maybe from your perspective, they're not. So those two lessons reminded me that, okay, sometimes people don't know what they're doing. And that's why I always start with self-awareness. If you don't know how your behavior is impacting other people, we can't really, I don't care how many tests you take, personality tests, I don't care how many leadership trainings you sit in, I don't care how many podcasts you listen to, how many books you read. If you don't have a base of awareness where you can say, okay, I know that I can sometimes be at 110.
Yep.
And while I want to have high expectations for my team, my 110 might look different than Fernanda's 100 or 100 or 99 or 80 or whatever. Like, do I want to, like, am I getting what I need? Are the people getting their service? Like, am I on that, trajectory or whatever the case may be? If I'm not, then we need to have a different conversation. Many people perceive a person's behavior as like a personal affront. And sometimes it's not that. Sometimes a person really thinks they're doing good work and they just don't know how what they think is good work ain't really good for this environment. Or that may have worked here, but this doesn't work there. And this is what we need to do. So am I clear on the expectations? Am I honoring their experience and having these conversations? Am I modeling, this kind of behavior? And if we don't have those conversations and really understand, like, oh no, you can't do this because of that. So like honoring the fact that people think they're doing a good job, and it's incumbent on us as leaders to help guide them on that journey to doing, great work.
I think that's wonderful. For the most part, I had a boss who would say, assume positive intent. Like
Hmm.
for for the most part, the majority of people are there trying to do a good job. They're not
Hmm.
trying to burn the place down. They're not trying to
Hmm.
sabotage. They're trying to earn a livelihood in an honest, good way, with integrity, with good intentions. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody's trying to offend us or tear us down for the
Right.
most part. For the most
Yeah.
part. In my again, I'll preface in my experience.
In my experience, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Lamar, we're getting to the end of the episode, and thank you so
Hmm.
much. Where can people find you if they want to keep learning from you or if they want to bring you into their organization?
That is a great question. And so I'm really for our social media only active on LinkedIn. So Lamarr with two R's, Lewis. It'd be a picture of me with my like this. Take that. Um you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only therapist. It'll say mental health therapist first after my name. My beard be a little thicker, but that's me. Or you go to the website lewisfamilyconsulting.net. That's lewisfamilyconsulting.net. And there's a contact page. You can reach out to me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate you
you.
being here. But Lamar, this was such a good conversation. I feel like we could have kept going on for another hour, honestly. But I want to say thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today.
Thank
For
you.
everyone watching, if this conversation landed for you the way that it landed for me, I would love for you to share it with someone on your team, maybe even your own leader, if that feels right. Psychological safety is not something that just happens, it's something we build on purpose,
Mm-hmm.
one conversation at a time. And I think today gave us a real roadmap for that. Make sure that you are subscribed so that you don't miss our next conversation. Drop a comment and let me know what stood out to you the most, and I'll see you on the next one.